Picture this. Somewhere in the glittering heart of London, a woman walks into an exclusive property viewing. She's impeccably dressed, her designer handbag worth more than most people's annual salary. She speaks softly, confidently, her accent carefully neutral. The estate agent shows her a multi-million-pound mansion in one of the city's most prestigious neighborhoods. She nods approvingly, makes a few calls in Mandarin, and within days, the property is hers. Cash purchase, no mortgage, no questions asked. Her name? Yadi Zhang. But here's the thing, Yadi Zhang doesn't exist. The woman viewing that mansion, living that impossibly luxurious lifestyle, dining at Michelin-starred restaurants, and moving through London's elite circles like she belonged there, she was a phantom, a carefully constructed illusion. Behind the designer clothes and the polished smile was someone else entirely, Zhimin Qian, a fugitive carrying secrets worth billions. And I'm not talking millions, folks. I'm talking about $6.6 billion. That's enough money to buy every single property on some of London's most expensive streets. That's enough to make you one of the richest people on earth. That's never work another day in your life, neither will your children, grandchildren, or great-great-great-grandchildren money. But this money? It was drenched in lies, manipulation, and the shattered dreams of over 128,000 people who trusted her. Welcome to the jaw-dropping true story of the Chinese crypto queen, a tale of spectacular greed, international manhunts, false identities, and the largest cryptocurrency seizure in British history. This is a story that spans continents, involves cutting-edge technology, old-school deception, and a woman who almost got away with one of the most audacious financial crimes of the 21st century. Buckle up, because we're about to dive deep into a world where digital currency meets criminal enterprise, where trust is weaponized, and where one woman's ambition knew absolutely no bounds. This is the story of Zhimin Qian, the crypto queen, and her spectacular fall from grace. Let's rewind the clock to 2014. China is experiencing an economic boom unlike anything the world has ever seen. Cities are transforming overnight. Skyscrapers pierce the clouds. The middle class is exploding, and with it comes something that hadn't existed in such force before: disposable income and investment fever. Everyone, and I mean everyone, is looking for the next big thing, the next opportunity to turn their modest savings into something substantial. Chinese investors are hungry, ambitious, and increasingly sophisticated. They've watched their neighbors get rich through real estate, through stocks, through manufacturing. Now they want their piece of the pie. Enter Tianjin, a massive port city in northeastern China, home to over 15 million people. It's a city of contrasts, ancient temples standing beside ultra-modern financial districts, traditional tea houses next door to tech startups. And in this buzzing hive of commerce and ambition, a company quietly opens its doors. The company's name? Tianjin Lantian Gerui Electronic Technology. Now, the name alone sounds impressive, doesn't it? Electronic technology. It has that ring of innovation, of being on the cutting edge, of understanding something the average person doesn't quite grasp yet. It's 2014, remember? Bitcoin has been around for a few years, but is still mysterious to most people. Blockchain is a word that makes people's eyes glaze over. Cryptocurrency is still the domain of tech nerds, libertarians, and people who really don't trust banks. But it's also starting to gain traction. People are hearing stories, maybe from a friend of a friend, about someone who bought Bitcoin for pennies and now it's worth thousands. The fear of missing out is real, and it's powerful. At the helm of Tianjin Lantian Gerui Electronic Technology is our protagonist, though she wouldn't become infamous for several years yet, Zhimin Qian. At this point, she's not hiding, she's not running, she's building. And what is she building? On the surface, an investment opportunity, a way for ordinary Chinese citizens to get involved in this revolutionary new technology called cryptocurrency. But dig a little deeper, look a little closer, and you'd see something else entirely. She was building a trap. Here's how it worked, and pay attention because this is where it gets diabolically clever. Zhimin Qian's company promised investors that they could make enormous returns by investing in cryptocurrency-related ventures. Not just good returns, enormous returns. We're talking 30%, 50%, sometimes even 80% returns on investment within impossibly short timeframes. 3 months, 6 months, sometimes even less. Now, anyone with a basic understanding of finance will tell you, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Returns like that don't exist in legitimate investments. They just don't. Even the most successful hedge funds in the world, run by the absolute geniuses of finance, would kill for consistent 20% annual returns. But here's the thing about human psychology. We want to believe, especially when we see others believing, especially when those others seem to be profiting. And Zhimin Qian understood human psychology better than most. She didn't just promise returns, she delivered them, at least at first. Early investors, they saw their money grow exactly as promised. They invested 100,000 yuan, and 3 months later, they had 150,000 yuan. Just like that. Magic? No. It was something much older and much more sinister. It was a Ponzi scheme, classic as they come, just dressed up in the shiny new clothes of cryptocurrency. For those who don't know, a Ponzi scheme is beautifully simple in its deception. You take money from new investors and use it to pay returns to earlier investors. Those early investors then become your best marketing tool because they tell everyone they know, this is legitimate, I got my returns exactly as promised. And so more people invest, and the cycle continues. You're not actually generating any real profit, you're not investing in anything genuine, you're just moving money around in a grand game of financial musical chairs. And it works until it doesn't, until there aren't enough new investors to pay the old ones, until the music stops and everyone realizes there aren't enough chairs. But we're not there yet. In 2014, 2015, 2016, the music is playing loud and clear, and Zhimin Qian is conducting the orchestra like a maestro. Her company grows, and grows, and grows. From dozens of investors to hundreds, from hundreds to thousands, from thousands to tens of thousands. People are mortgaging their homes to invest with her. They're pulling their children's college funds. They're borrowing from relatives. They're going all in because they've seen their neighbors get rich, and they're not going to miss out. Zhimin Qian is becoming wealthy beyond imagination, but she's also becoming something else, visible. And in the world of financial fraud, visibility is dangerous. The company expands beyond Tianjin, other cities, other provinces. The reach grows to over 128,000 investors. Think about that number for a moment. That's not a small group of people. That's a mid-sized city's worth of individuals. That's more people than filled the largest stadiums in the world. That's 128,000 families, 128 sets of hopes and dreams, 128 people who trusted their hard-earned money to this woman and her promises. The amount of money flowing through Tianjin Lantian Gerui electronic technology is staggering. We're talking billions of yuan, the kind of money that attracts attention, the kind of money that makes people ask questions. And by 2017, people are asking questions. Investors who try to withdraw larger sums start experiencing delays. Customer service becomes less responsive. The excuses start piling up. Banking issues, regulatory holds, system updates, the classic signs that something is wrong. Rumors begin to swirl, whispers in investment forums, worried messages in WeChat groups. Someone claims they can't access their funds. Someone else says the offices seemed empty when they visited. The buzz grows louder. And then the Chinese authorities start investigating. When the police begin digging into Tianjin Lantian Gerui electronic technology, what they find is damning. This isn't a legitimate investment company. This is a fraud operation, a massive, elaborate scheme that has stolen billions from over 100,000 victims. Warrants are issued, assets are frozen, Offices are raided. But when the authorities come knocking on Zhimin Qian's door, they find something unexpected. She's gone. Vanished, like smoke, like a ghost, like she was never there at all. The crypto queen has fled her kingdom, leaving behind thousands of angry investors, billions in losses, and a whole lot of questions. The most pressing one being, where in the world is Zhimin Qian? The authorities discover she's already left the country, but which country? And how did she disappear so completely, so quickly? The chase is on, but they're chasing a ghost. London, England. The year is 2017, and the city is as it has always been, a glittering, cosmopolitan maze where money flows like the Thames, and people from every corner of the globe come seeking opportunity, reinvention, or refuge. The city has always been a haven for those seeking to disappear into plain sight. It's too big, too diverse, too busy for anyone to look twice at a well-dressed Chinese woman walking down Knightsbridge or browsing in Harrods. London is a city of 8 million stories, 8 million secrets, and, if you have the right resources, 8 million places to hide. And Zhimin Qian has resources. Oh boy, does she have resources. But she can't arrive as herself. The name Zhimin Qian is toxic now. It's radioactive. It's attached to police bulletins, Interpol notices, and the furious demands of 128,000 defrauded investors. So she does what any intelligent fugitive would do. She becomes someone else. Enter Yadi Zhang. Now, creating a false identity isn't as simple as just picking a new name and buying a fake passport off the dark web. Well, maybe for amateurs it is, but Zhimin Qian isn't an amateur. She's a woman who orchestrated a multi-billion-dollar fraud operation. She understands systems, documentation, and how to exploit weaknesses. The identity of Yadi Zhang isn't just a fake name. It's a complete identity, backed by documentation that can withstand casual scrutiny. We're talking about identity documents, banking references, possibly even a manufactured history. This is sophisticated identity fraud, the kind that requires expertise, connections, and yes, a whole lot of money. And money is one thing Zhimin Qian has plenty of. But here's what's particularly audacious about choosing London as her hiding spot. The UK has some of the most sophisticated financial monitoring systems in the world. London is one of the global capitals of finance, home to more banks, investment firms, and financial investigators than almost anywhere else on Earth. Its money laundering regulations are stringent, its law enforcement generally competent. This isn't some backwater where you can bribe your way to invisibility. This is one of the most watched, most regulated financial centers on the planet. And yet, Zhimin Qian walks right in and makes herself at home. How? Let's talk about the psychology and strategy of hiding in plain sight. First, she goes high-end. She doesn't hide in a dodgy flat in a questionable neighborhood. She doesn't keep her head down and live modestly. No, she does the opposite. She moves into the kind of properties that scream legitimate wealth. Exclusive postcodes, gated communities, places where the neighbors are diplomats, business tycoons, celebrities, people who value privacy and don't ask nosy questions about where your money came from. It's counterintuitive, but it's brilliant. If you're living in luxury, people assume you belong there. They assume you've been vetted, that your money has been checked, that you're legitimate. Poverty attracts scrutiny. Extreme wealth? It deflects it. Second, she likely surrounds herself with the trappings of legitimacy. Legal advisors, financial consultants, accountants. These professionals provide a buffer between her and any potential investigation. They handle the paperwork, the transactions, the boring details that might otherwise expose inconsistencies in her identity. Third, and this is crucial, she keeps a relatively low profile despite the luxury. She's not plastering her face all over social media. She's not courting publicity or attention. She's just another wealthy foreign national living quietly in London, and there are thousands upon thousands of those. The UK, particularly London, has been criticized for years for being too welcoming to dirty money. There's even a term for it, Londongrad, referring to the number of Russian oligarchs who park their wealth there. But it's not just Russians. Money from all over the world flows into London property, and the systems designed to catch this money aren't always as effective as they should be. Zhimin Qian slips through the cracks and begins her life as Yadi Zhang. And for a while, it works beautifully. She lives the life many people dream of, the finest restaurants, shopping on Bond Street, perhaps the opera at Covent Garden, weekends in the Cotswolds. It's a life of comfort and privilege, funded by the shattered dreams and stolen savings of over 100,000 people back in China. But here's the thing about living as a fugitive, no matter how comfortable, you're always looking over your shoulder, always wondering if today is the day someone recognizes you, always knowing that this borrowed life could end in an instant. And back in China, the case isn't going away. If anything, it's intensifying. The scale of the fraud is becoming clearer to investigators. The amount of money involved, the number of victims. This isn't some minor financial crime that will be forgotten. This is one of the biggest investment frauds in Chinese history. People have lost their life savings. Families have been destroyed. Some victims, facing financial ruin and shame, have taken their own lives. The pressure on Chinese authorities to find Zhimin Qian is immense. And when pressure mounts on Chinese law enforcement, they don't just give up because someone has left the country. They reach out, they coordinate, they work with international partners. Enter Interpol, the International Criminal Police Organization. An international notice is issued, likely a red notice, which is essentially a global wanted poster. It alerts law enforcement agencies in all 195 member countries that this person is wanted for serious crimes. It doesn't carry the weight of an arrest warrant in every country, but it's a massive red flag that puts Zhimin Qian's name and any known aliases on the radar of police forces worldwide. And then there's the money trail. Here's where Zhimin Qian made a crucial decision that would ultimately lead to her downfall. She could have spread her stolen wealth across dozens of different assets, making it nearly impossible to trace or seize. She could have invested in art, in gold, in multiple properties across different countries, in shell companies layered so deep that investigators would need years to unravel them. But instead, she went big on Bitcoin. Now, in 2017, this might have seemed like a clever move. Bitcoin is supposed to be anonymous, right? It's supposed to be beyond the reach of governments and traditional finance systems. It's the Wild West of currency, perfect for someone trying to hide massive amounts of wealth. Except it's not as anonymous as people think. Bitcoin transactions are recorded on the blockchain, a public, permanent ledger. While addresses aren't automatically linked to real-world identities, they can be traced. And if investigators can link a wallet address to a real person, they can see every transaction that wallet has ever made. Every single one. Forever. It's like leaving a permanent trail of breadcrumbs, except these breadcrumbs are made of diamond, and they never disappear. Zhimin Qian has accumulated 61,000 Bitcoin. At 2017 prices, that's already worth hundreds of millions. But Bitcoin is volatile. It rises, it falls. By 2021, when authorities are closing in, those 61,000 Bitcoin are worth over $2 billion. By 2025, when the final accounting is done, $6.6 billion. That's not just life-changing money, that's nation-shaking money. This is now a matter of international importance money. And UK authorities are starting to notice something interesting in their ongoing efforts to combat money laundering. There's a Yadi Zhang who seems to have an awful lot of cryptocurrency, an unusual amount, a suspicious amount. The Metropolitan Police, specifically their Economic Crime Command, begins to take an interest. Who is this woman? Where did this wealth come from? The documentation says one thing, but experienced investigators develop a nose for when something doesn't smell right. They start pulling threads, checking records, making inquiries. And slowly, painstakingly, the false identity of Yadi Zhang begins to unravel. Perhaps it's a banking record that doesn't quite add up. Perhaps it's a property transaction that raises flags. Perhaps it's communication intercepts that reveal she's speaking to contacts in China. Perhaps it's cooperation with Chinese authorities who have been hunting for Zhimin Qian and now have reason to believe she's in London. Whatever the catalyst, the walls are closing in. The Phantom of London is about to be exposed. And in a small, undoubtedly windowless office in the Metropolitan Police Headquarters, investigators are assembling a case file with a name on it, Zhimin Qian, also known as Yadi Zhang. The crypto queen's time is running out. As UK authorities piece together the evidence, Zhimin Qian, also known as Yadi Zhang, has no idea that her carefully constructed new life is about to come crashing down. The hunters have found their prey, but will she flee again before they can act?
There's a particular kind of tension in police work that most people never see. It happens after the investigation phase, after you've gathered your evidence and built your case, but before you've made your arrest. It's the knowledge that you have one shot to get this right. Because if you move too early, the target might flee again. If you move too late, they might move their assets beyond reach. If you tip your hand in any way, a careless word, a suspicious inquiry that gets back to them, you lose the element of surprise. And surprise is everything. In this case, the UK's Economic Crime Command is working with multiple agencies. We're talking Metropolitan Police, the National Crime Agency, financial intelligence units, and, importantly, international partners in China. This isn't some TV show where a lone detective cracks the case. This is coordinated, methodical work involving dozens of people across multiple time zones. The challenge? Building an airtight case against someone who has already demonstrated sophisticated understanding of how to evade detection. Let's understand what investigators are dealing with. They have a woman living under a false identity, in possession of massive cryptocurrency holdings, whose real identity is wanted in connection with a multi-billion-dollar fraud in China. But to secure a conviction in the UK, they need to prove crimes committed under UK law. This is crucial. They can't just arrest her for what she did in China. That's not their jurisdiction. They need UK-specific charges, and that's where the money laundering angle comes in. Money laundering, in its simplest form, is taking dirty money, or proceeds of crime, and making it appear clean, or legitimate. The UK has robust anti-money laundering laws, specifically the Proceeds of Crime Act 2002. Under this law, it's a crime to 1. Conceal, disguise, convert, or transfer criminal property. 2. Enter into arrangements that facilitate the acquisition, retention, use, or control of criminal property. 3. Possess criminal property. The maximum sentence? 14 years in prison. And here's what makes this such a powerful tool for prosecutors. If they can prove that the money came from criminal activity, in this case, the fraud in China, then simply possessing that money in the UK is a crime. Living in those expensive properties? Crime. Moving the Bitcoin around? Crime. Every single transaction? Potentially a separate crime. But proving it is the challenge. Cryptocurrency adds a layer of complexity that traditional financial crimes don't have. You can't just subpoena bank records and follow the money. Well, you can follow blockchain transactions, but connecting those transactions to a specific individual requires technical expertise, cooperation from cryptocurrency exchanges, and often a bit of luck. UK investigators begin the painstaking process of tracing Zhimin Qian's cryptocurrency holdings. They work with blockchain analysis firms, specialist companies that do nothing but track cryptocurrency movements. These firms have sophisticated software that can identify patterns, cluster wallet addresses, and sometimes even identify the exchanges where coins have been traded. The exchanges are crucial. When you want to convert cryptocurrency into traditional fiat currency, pounds, dollars, euros, you typically need to go through an exchange. And most legitimate exchanges, at least those operating in regulated markets, require identity verification, know your customer rules.
So investigators start making requests to these exchanges. Has anyone using the identity Yadi Zhang opened accounts? Have there been large Bitcoin deposits or withdrawals? Can you provide transaction histories, IP addresses, linked bank accounts? It's tedious work. Some exchanges cooperate fully. Others, especially those based in jurisdictions with looser regulations, drag their feet or refuse. Some cryptocurrencies are exchanged on decentralized platforms that don't keep traditional records at all. But investigators are persistent. They're building a map of the money, following it from the original fraud victims in China through various cryptocurrency wallets and exchanges, and eventually to accounts and assets in the UK connected to Yadi Zhang. And they're finding something else, a staggering amount of Bitcoin, concentrated in wallet addresses they can link to their target. We're not talking about a few coins here and there. We're talking about 61,000 Bitcoin. To put this in perspective, there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin in existence. That's it, ever. That's baked into the cryptocurrency's code. Zhimin Qian controls about 0.29% of all Bitcoin that will ever exist. She's not just wealthy in cryptocurrency terms. She's a whale, a leviathan, someone whose very movements could theoretically affect the market. As the evidence mounts, the investigators face another challenge: operational security. They're tracking someone with substantial resources who has already fled one country to avoid prosecution. If she gets even a hint that UK authorities are onto her, she could disappear again. And this time, she might pick somewhere without extradition treaties, somewhere UK law enforcement can't reach. The team decides on a coordinated operation. They'll need to simultaneously secure arrest warrants, prepare seizure orders for the cryptocurrency, and conduct the arrest, all without tipping their hand. And there's another complication: the Bitcoin itself. In traditional financial crimes, seizing assets is relatively straightforward. You get a court order, you go to the bank, you freeze the accounts. Done. But cryptocurrency exists in digital wallets, secured by private keys, essentially passwords. If you don't have the private key, you can't access the Bitcoin. It's cryptographically impossible. So it's not enough to arrest Zhimin Qian. They need her to either voluntarily provide access to the wallets, or they need to seize devices that contain the keys, and they need to do it before she has a chance to move the Bitcoin beyond their reach. Imagine planning a heist, except in reverse. You're the authorities, and you need to simultaneously capture the criminal and crack their safe, which could be locked away somewhere digital, protected by encryption that would take supercomputers thousands of years to break through brute force. The date is set, the warrants are prepared, officers are briefed, cryptocurrency experts are on standby to immediately secure any digital assets. Translators are ready in case language barriers complicate communication. Legal counsel is prepared for the inevitable court proceedings. It's a cool morning in London sometime in April of 2024 when the operation goes down. The exact date and location haven't been publicly disclosed in full detail. Operational security extends even after arrests, but we know it happens with precision. Plainclothes officers approach a residence. They're not looking for a dramatic Hollywood-style breach with battering rams and shouting. This is a financial crime arrest. They're looking for a controlled, professional operation that secures both the suspect and, crucially, any devices or information that could lead them to the cryptocurrency holdings. The door opens. And there she is, Zhimin Qian, the woman who has been living as Yadi Zhang, the woman wanted in connection with one of China's largest investment frauds, the woman in possession of what will turn out to be the largest cryptocurrency seizure in UK history. She's informed that she's under arrest. The charges: money laundering and possession of criminal property. Officers sweep the residence. They're looking for computers, phones, tablets, USB drives, written passwords, anything that might contain or lead to cryptocurrency private keys. They find multiple devices. These are immediately secured and will be forensically analyzed by specialists. Zhimin Qian is taken into custody. She's processed, photographed, fingerprinted. The fake identity of Yadi Zhang is officially dead. The real Zhimin Qian is now in the custody of the British legal system. But the operation isn't over. Now comes one of the most critical phases: securing the Bitcoin. In custody, investigators make a proposition. Cooperate with the cryptocurrency seizure, and things might go easier in court. Contest it and face additional charges, additional legal complexity, and potentially more severe sentencing. It's not entirely clear from public records exactly how the Bitcoin was ultimately secured, but we know this. UK authorities successfully seized 61,000 Bitcoin. This isn't a small technical achievement. It means they either obtained the private keys, had cooperation from Zhimin Qian, perhaps as part of a deal, or managed to break into secure devices, a process that would require serious technical expertise. The value of this seizure at the time, already in the billions. But Bitcoin is volatile. It rises and falls with market sentiment, regulatory news, and global economic conditions. By the time the final legal accounting is done, the 61,000 Bitcoin are worth approximately $6.6 billion. To put this in perspective, that's more than the GDP of some small nations. Enough to fund major infrastructure projects. More than most people will see in thousands of lifetimes. And it's the largest cryptocurrency seizure in UK history. Not just by a little bit, by a lot. This seizure trumps previous cases. It's a landmark moment in the intersection of cryptocurrency and law enforcement. News of the arrest begins to leak, first in law enforcement circles, then to media outlets. Journalists start digging. Who is this woman? What's the story? How much Bitcoin? Back in China, the news is even bigger. For years, the victims of the Tianjin Lantian Gerui fraud have been demanding justice. They've lost their savings, their homes, their futures. Some have lost hope entirely. And now, finally, there's news that Zhimin Qian has been caught. But the story isn't over. Being arrested is one thing. Being convicted is another. And in the British legal system, everyone is entitled to a defense, to due process, to their day in court. The legal battle is about to begin. Zhimin Qian is in custody, the Bitcoin is seized, but now she faces the full weight of the UK legal system. Will she fight the charges? Will she cooperate? And what about all those victims back in China? Will they ever see justice?
The British legal system is a beast of procedure, precedent, and patience. If you're expecting American-style courtroom drama with impassioned speeches and surprise witnesses, you're in for a disappointment. British courts, particularly in financial crime cases, are methodical, technical, and often quite dry affairs. But don't mistake dry for unimportant. What happens in the months following Zhimin Qian's arrest will determine not just her fate, but will set precedents for how cryptocurrency crimes are handled in the UK and potentially beyond. Remember, this is the largest crypto seizure in British history. Every decision, every ruling, every piece of evidence presented will be studied by legal scholars, law enforcement agencies, and probably more than a few criminals looking to learn from her mistakes. Zhimin Qian is formally charged. The charges, as previously mentioned, center on money laundering and possession of criminal property. Specifically, she's accused of possessing, concealing, and attempting to convert property she knew or suspected represented criminal proceeds from the Tianjin Lantian Gerui fraud. Now she needs legal representation. And in the UK, even if you're accused of massive financial crimes, you're entitled to a defense. Given the amounts involved and the complexity of the case, she almost certainly secures experienced legal counsel, the kind of lawyers who specialize in serious fraud and financial crime. Her legal team faces a challenging situation. The evidence against their client is substantial. 1. Identity fraud. She was living under a false identity. That's not disputed. That's a separate crime in itself. 2. The Bitcoin holdings. She possessed 61,000 Bitcoin, worth billions. Where did that money come from? That's the central question. 3. The China connection. Chinese authorities have provided evidence linking her to the fraud operation.
Statements from victims, corporate records, banking information, the paper trail leading back to Tianjin Lantian Gerui. 4. The flight. She fled China when investigations began. That's consciousness of guilt. It suggests she knew what she was doing was criminal. So what's the defense strategy? Option 1. Claim ignorance. My client was not the primary operator of the fraud. She was a mid-level employee who happened to own Bitcoin she purchased legitimately. Problem: hard to explain 61,000 Bitcoin as casual investment, especially when you fled the country. Option 2. Challenge jurisdiction. Whatever happened in China is not the UK's concern. She hasn't committed crimes on British soil. Problem: possessing proceeds of crime is a crime in the UK, regardless of where the original crime occurred. Option 3. Challenge the evidence linking the Bitcoin to the fraud. Prove that these specific Bitcoin came from fraud victims. Problem: blockchain analysis can, with increasing sophistication, trace cryptocurrency movements. Option 4. Negotiate a plea deal. Admit to lesser charges in exchange for reduced sentencing and cooperation. This is probably the most realistic option given the evidence. The reality is, when you're caught red-handed with $6.6 billion in Bitcoin, living under a fake identity, and wanted in connection with a massive fraud, your legal options are limited. This isn't a case where reasonable doubt exists about whether a crime occurred. The question is really about her culpability and the appropriate punishment. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, there's another process happening: the asset recovery investigation. The UK has some of the world's most aggressive asset recovery laws. Under the Proceeds of Crime Act, authorities can confiscate assets that are determined to be the proceeds of crime. And they don't just go after the obvious stuff. They go after everything. Properties purchased with tainted money, seized. Vehicles, seized. Bank accounts, frozen and forfeited. Jewelry, seized. That designer handbag mentioned earlier, probably seized. And, of course, the Bitcoin, all 61,000 of them. But here's where it gets complicated. What happens to seized cryptocurrency? In traditional asset forfeiture, you sell the stuff and put the money in government coffers or compensate victims. But 61,000 Bitcoin isn't something you can just dump on the market without causing significant price disruption. Imagine trying to sell a massive amount of anything rare and valuable all at once. You flood the market, the price drops, and you get less money than if you sold slowly. But selling slowly means sitting on the asset, which has its own risks. What if the value drops? What if there are legal challenges to the seizure? What if the cryptocurrency becomes worthless? UK authorities have to make strategic decisions about how to handle this unprecedented seizure. Do they sell immediately? Do they hold? Do they sell in tranches over time? There's no playbook for this because it's never happened before on this scale. There are also international considerations. The victims of the fraud are in China. Does some or all of this money go back to compensate them? How do you fairly distribute billions of dollars among 128,000 victims? Do you track down each one individually? What if some can't be located? What if some invested only a little while others invested their life savings? These are not simple questions, and they'll take years to fully resolve. Back in the courtroom, the proceedings move forward. There are preliminary hearings. Bail is almost certainly denied. She's already fled one country. She's not getting the opportunity to flee another. She remains in custody awaiting trial. The evidence is presented. Prosecutors lay out their case. Your Honor, the defendant knowingly operated a fraudulent investment scheme in China between 2014 and 2017. She induced over 128,000 individuals to invest in what she claimed were cryptocurrency-related opportunities, promising extraordinary returns. Instead of investing these funds legitimately, she operated a classic Ponzi scheme, using new investments to pay earlier investors while siphoning billions for herself. When Chinese authorities began investigating, the defendant fled the country, taking with her 61,000 Bitcoin, cryptocurrency purchased with the proceeds of her fraud. She entered the United Kingdom using a false identity, that of Yadi Zhang, with fraudulent documentation. While in the UK, she lived a lifestyle of luxury funded entirely by these criminal proceeds. She purchased properties, made investments, and conducted transactions, all of which constituted money laundering under British law. The defense may argue that crimes committed in China are beyond our jurisdiction, but Your Honor, the moment the defendant brought those criminal proceeds into the United Kingdom and used them, she committed crimes under UK law. The Proceeds of Crime Act is clear. Possessing, using, or concealing criminal property is an offense, regardless of where the original crime occurred. The evidence is overwhelming. The blockchain analysis clearly traces the movement of funds. Chinese authorities have provided extensive documentation. The defendant's use of a false identity demonstrates consciousness of guilt. We ask the court to find the defendant guilty on all counts.
The defense presents their case, likely arguing for leniency, disputing elements of the prosecution's narrative, perhaps painting Zhimin Qian as less central to the fraud operation than the evidence suggests. But realistically, they're fighting an uphill battle. In the end, it's a guilty verdict. Guilty of money laundering, guilty of possession of criminal property. The specifics of how many counts and the exact legal language would be in the official court documents, but the outcome is clear. Zhimin Qian has been convicted of serious financial crimes in a UK court. Now comes sentencing, and this is where things get real. British sentencing guidelines for money laundering and possession of criminal property consider several factors. The amount involved, obviously astronomical in this case. The defendant's role. She was a principal operator, not a minor player. Planning and sophistication. Highly sophisticated, long-running scheme. Impact on victims. Devastating, affecting over 128,000 people. Use of false identity. Aggravating factors showing deception. Remorse and cooperation. Does she show genuine remorse? Did she cooperate with authorities? The prosecution pushes for a lengthy sentence. This is one of the largest financial frauds ever prosecuted in the UK. A strong sentence sends a message: the UK will not be a safe haven for financial criminals, and cryptocurrency will not be a shield against prosecution. The defense argues for leniency. Perhaps they point to cooperation in recovering the Bitcoin. Perhaps they argue that their client was not the sole architect of the fraud. Perhaps they cite age, health, or other mitigating circumstances. The judge considers everything. The packed courtroom waits. In the public gallery, perhaps there are journalists, law enforcement observers, victims who have traveled from China hoping to see justice done. And then, the sentence is delivered. November 2025, 11 years and 8 months in prison. Let that sink in. Not months. Not a handful of years, nearly 12 years behind bars. For context, that's a very substantial sentence in the UK system. It reflects the severity of the crimes, the amount of money involved, and the devastating impact on victims. It's sending a clear message. This kind of financial crime will not be tolerated, and the penalties will be severe. Zhimin Qian, the woman who once controlled billions, who lived in luxury in some of London's most exclusive neighborhoods, who thought she could reinvent herself and escape her past, will spend over a decade in a British prison. But even with the conviction and sentencing, the story isn't quite over. Zhimin Qian is sentenced, but what about the victims? What about the billions in seized Bitcoin? And what does this case mean for the future of cryptocurrency crime and law enforcement? The gavel has fallen. Justice, at least in the legal sense, has been served. Zhimin Qian will spend the next 11 years and 8 months in a British prison, a far cry from the luxury lifestyle she enjoyed as Yadi Zhang. But let's talk about what this case really means. Because this isn't just about one woman's spectacular fall from grace. This is about something much bigger. First, let's talk about the victims, those 128,000 people back in China whose lives were upended by this fraud. Imagine you're a middle-aged factory worker in Tianjin. You've worked hard your entire life, saving money bit by bit. Your child is about to go to university. You've got a modest apartment, a decent life.
Then you hear about this investment opportunity. Your neighbor invested and made great returns. Your coworker invested and bought a new car. You think, maybe this is my chance to secure my retirement, to give my kid a better future. So you invest. Not everything, you're cautious, but a significant amount, 200,000 yuan. It's several years of savings. At first, it's great. You see returns. You reinvest. You invest more. You tell family members. They invest too. Your brother-in-law mortgages his house and puts in 500,000 yuan. Then, the music stops. You can't withdraw your money. Customer service stops responding. The offices are empty. And then, the news breaks. It was all a fraud, a scam, a Ponzi scheme. Your money is gone. Your brother-in-law's money is gone. Your child's university fund is gone. Multiply that story by 128,000 and you begin to understand the human cost of Zhimin Qian's crimes. Some victims lost everything. Some lost their homes when they couldn't make mortgage payments on properties they'd used as collateral. Some lost their marriages when the financial stress became too much. Some, tragically, lost hope entirely. This isn't a victimless crime. This isn't just numbers on a screen. This is real suffering, affecting real people. So what happens to them now? In theory, the seized Bitcoin should go to compensate victims. That's typically how asset forfeiture works in these cases. The government seizes the proceeds of crime and uses them to make victims whole. But the reality is complicated. First, there's the international aspect. The victims are in China. The assets are seized in the UK. There need to be agreements between governments about how to handle this. Do the UK authorities send the money directly to Chinese authorities, who then distribute it? Do they work with an international organization? Do they try to identify and compensate victims directly? Then there's the practical challenge of identifying and verifying victims. Not everyone who lost money filed police reports. Some may have been too embarrassed. Some may not have known who to contact. Some may have passed away in the years since the fraud. How do you reach all 128,000 people? And then there's the math. If you sell 61,000 Bitcoin for $6.6 billion and divide that among 128,000 victims, that's roughly $51,500 per victim. But that assumes equal losses, which isn't realistic. Some people invested small amounts. Others invested everything they had. Do you compensate proportionally? Do you prioritize those who lost the most? Do you cap compensation at a certain amount? These questions don't have easy answers, and as of late 2025, the process of victim compensation is likely still ongoing. These things take years to resolve, especially in international cases. But beyond the victims, there are broader implications of this case that will resonate for years. Lesson 1. Cryptocurrency is not anonymous. One of Bitcoin's early selling points was anonymity, no government control, no central authority, freedom from oversight. Except it's not really anonymous, it's pseudonymous. Your name isn't attached to your wallet address, but every transaction you make is permanently recorded on a public ledger, forever. Law enforcement has gotten really good at blockchain analysis. Companies like Chainalysis, Elliptic, and CipherTrace have sophisticated tools that can trace cryptocurrency movements, identify patterns, and link addresses to real-world identities. If you're a criminal thinking cryptocurrency is a safe place to hide your money, this case should disabuse you of that notion. The crypto queen got caught. And if she got caught with billions, you, with your much smaller operation, probably will too. Lesson 2. There's no safe haven in the digital age. Zhimin Qian fled China and made it to the UK, one of the most sophisticated countries in the world. She created a false identity, she lived quietly, she did a lot of things right from a fugitive's perspective. And she still got caught. International cooperation in law enforcement has never been stronger. Information sharing between countries, especially on financial crimes, is extensive. Interpol, Europol, bilateral agreements, there are multiple ways for police in one country to work with police in another. If you commit a major financial crime, there's really nowhere to hide. Maybe you can delay capture, maybe you can live a few years on the run, but eventually the resources, the cooperation, the technology, it all catches up to you. Lesson 3. The UK is getting serious about dirty money. For years, London has been criticized as a haven for dirty money. The phrase Londongrad exists for a reason. The city's property market has been inflated by foreign wealth, some of it legitimate, some of it very much not. But this case shows that UK authorities, when they focus on it, can tackle even the most sophisticated financial crimes. The Economic Crime Command, the National Crime Agency, the Serious Fraud Office, these organizations have expertise and resources. This case might represent a turning point. After high-profile embarrassments, Russians moving money freely, suspected fraud proceeds buying up prime real estate, there's political pressure to clean up London's reputation. Cases like this show that enforcement is possible. Lesson 4. The old scams never die. They just get new clothes. At its heart, this was a Ponzi scheme, not a new invention, not some revolutionary criminal enterprise. Charles Ponzi ran his scheme in Boston in 1920. It's over a century old. But dress it up in cryptocurrency, add some technical jargon, leverage people's FOMO and lack of understanding about new technology, and boom, the old scheme works just as well as it ever did. This is a reminder. Whenever there's a new technology, a new investment vehicle, a new way of making money, scammers will be there to exploit people's lack of knowledge. Cryptocurrency, NFTs, AI startups, whatever comes next. The technology changes, but human gullibility remains remarkably consistent. Lesson 5. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. This is the oldest lesson in the book, and yet people fall for it over and over again. 30% returns in 3 months? 50% returns in 6 months? 80% returns in a year? No. Nope. Not happening. Not legitimately. Warren Buffett, one of the most successful investors in history, averages about 20% annual returns over his career. And he's Warren Buffett. He's been doing this for 70 years. He has access to the best information, the best companies, the best deals. If someone with no track record is promising you returns that beat Warren Buffett, that person is either lying or is about to lose all your money through spectacularly risky investments. And yet, people want to believe. They see others winning, and they don't want to miss out. The fear of missing out is a powerful psychological force. But here's the thing. If an investment opportunity is truly phenomenal, if it's truly going to make people rich, it doesn't need aggressive marketing. It doesn't need to seek out random investors. Legitimate high-return opportunities have more capital than they know what to do with. If someone is aggressively pitching you an investment, especially one you don't fully understand, especially one promising extraordinary returns, walk away. Run away. It's a scam. Now, let's talk about what happens to Zhimin Qian in prison. British prisons aren't pleasant places, even for white-collar criminals. She won't be in some cushy minimum security facility. She'll be in a regular prison, likely a women's prison, sharing facilities with all manner of offenders. Gone are the luxury apartments. Gone are the shopping trips to Bond Street. Gone is the freedom to walk outside whenever she wants. Instead, it's small cells, institutional food, strict schedules, and the constant reminder that the outside world has moved on without her. She'll serve her time. With good behavior, she might be eligible for release after serving about 2/3 of her sentence, so maybe around 8 years. But that's still 8 years of her life behind bars. And after release, assuming she's not extradited to China, which is a real possibility, she'll be deported from the UK. She'll likely be marked as a convicted felon for the rest of her life, limiting where she can travel, where she can live, what work she can do. The life of luxury is over, forever. But what about the Bitcoin? That $6.6 billion doesn't just disappear. It sits in digital wallets, controlled now by UK authorities, and they have to decide what to do with it. As of late 2025, the Bitcoin is likely still held by the government. Selling such a massive amount requires careful planning. You can't just dump 61,000 Bitcoin on the market. That would crash the price, potentially destabilizing the entire cryptocurrency market. Instead, they'll likely sell it gradually, perhaps through structured auction processes to institutional buyers. The money raised will go into the UK government's Asset Recovery Fund, and from there, the complex process of victim compensation will continue. Some of that money might fund law enforcement operations. Some might go to victim support services. Some, hopefully most, will eventually make its way to the people who lost their savings. It won't make them whole. Money can't undo the years of stress, the broken trust, the opportunities lost. But it's something. It's a recognition that what happened to them was wrong, and that there's at least an attempt to make it right. And finally, let's consider the broader message this case sends. To criminals, don't think cryptocurrency makes you untouchable. Don't think you can hide in London or any other major financial center. Law enforcement is catching up to cryptocurrency crime, and the penalties are severe. To investors, do your due diligence. Understand what you're investing in. Be skeptical of extraordinary promises. Protect your hard-earned money. To regulators, the cryptocurrency world needs better oversight. Yes, it's decentralized. Yes, it's global. Yes, it's complicated. But that doesn't mean it should be the Wild West. There need to be protections for investors, consequences for fraud, and international cooperation to catch the criminals. To victims, your stories matter. Your suffering is real. And while the justice system is slow and imperfect, this case shows that there is still accountability. Bad actors can be caught. Assets can be recovered. Justice, delayed though it may be, can still be served. The story of Zhimin Qian, the crypto queen, is a modern morality tale. It's about greed and deception, but also about hubris. She thought she was smarter than the system. She thought she could disappear. She thought cryptocurrency would be her shield. She was wrong. And now, from a British prison cell, she has over a decade to contemplate that mistake. But is this really the end? Are there other crypto criminals out there, right now, thinking they can pull off what Zhimin Qian couldn't? And what new schemes are being cooked up as cryptocurrency evolves? Let's zoom out for a moment. Let's look at the bigger picture. The Zhimin Qian case is over, but the story of cryptocurrency crime is far from finished. In fact, in many ways, it's just beginning. In late 2025, cryptocurrency has become mainstream in a way that would have seemed impossible a decade ago. Major corporations hold Bitcoin on their balance sheets. Countries are experimenting with central bank digital currencies. You can buy coffee with crypto in many major cities. But with mainstream adoption comes mainstream crime. The old days of cryptocurrency being primarily the domain of tech enthusiasts and libertarians are over. Now it's used by everyone, including every kind of criminal you can imagine. There are the Ponzi schemes, like Zhimin Qian's operation. There are ransomware attacks, where hackers encrypt your data and demand cryptocurrency payment. There's the drug trade, moving massive amounts of illegal substances with cryptocurrency as payment. There's weapons trafficking, human trafficking, and every other dark enterprise you can think of. And then there are the new crimes that only exist because of cryptocurrency. Rug pulls in the NFT market, pump and dump schemes with obscure altcoins, fake initial coin offerings that raise millions and then disappear. Law enforcement is adapting, but they're always playing catch-up. For every technique they develop to track cryptocurrency, criminals develop countermeasures. Privacy coins like Monero are designed specifically to be untraceable. Mixing services deliberately obscure the trail of transactions. Decentralized exchanges operate without the kind of regulatory oversight that makes investigations possible. It's an arms race, and it's not clear who's winning. But the Zhimin Qian case offers hope. It shows that even sophisticated criminals with billions of dollars can be caught. It shows that international cooperation works. It shows that blockchain analysis, while not perfect, is a powerful tool. Most importantly, it shows that there are consequences. Because here's what potential crypto criminals need to understand. Every transaction is recorded, forever. You might think you're anonymous, you might think you've covered your tracks, you might think you're safe.
But that blockchain is forever. Those transactions are forever, and blockchain analysis techniques only get better with time. There are criminals today who think they've gotten away with it. They've moved their ill-gotten gains into cryptocurrency. They're living well, confident in their anonymity. But law enforcement is patient. They're building cases. They're developing new techniques. And one day, maybe 5 years from now, maybe 10, maybe 20, there's going to be a knock on the door. And just like Zhimin Qian, they're going to discover that the past always catches up with you. For victims of cryptocurrency fraud, the Zhimin Qian case offers a different kind of hope. The hope that justice, however delayed, is possible, that your suffering matters, that the people who stole from you can be held accountable. It won't always happen quickly, it won't always be complete, but it can happen. If you've been the victim of a cryptocurrency scam, here's what you should do. Report it immediately to local law enforcement and national financial crime units. In the UK, that's Action Fraud. In the US, it's the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. Every country has equivalent organizations. Document everything. Transaction records, communications, website screenshots, everything. The more evidence you can provide, the better. Seek legal advice. There may be civil remedies available, even if criminal prosecution is slow. Connect with other victims. There's strength in numbers. Class action lawsuits can be effective, and law enforcement takes cases more seriously when there are multiple complainants. Be patient. Financial investigations, especially international ones involving cryptocurrency, take time, years sometimes, but they do happen. For potential investors, the lessons are clear. 1. Understand what you're investing in. If you don't understand cryptocurrency, don't invest in it until you do. And if someone promises you returns you don't understand, that's a red flag. 2. If it sounds too good to be true, it is. This can't be emphasized enough. Legitimate investments don't promise extraordinary returns with no risk. 3. Verify, verify, verify. Is the company registered? Are there independent audits? What do other investors say? Do your homework. 4. Never invest more than you can afford to lose. This is especially true for volatile assets like cryptocurrency. 5. Be wary of pressure. Scammers create artificial urgency. Invest now or miss out. Legitimate opportunities don't disappear overnight. And for the cryptocurrency industry itself, this case should be a wake-up call. The industry has spent years resisting regulation, arguing that the decentralized nature of cryptocurrency makes traditional oversight impossible or undesirable. But cases like this show why regulation matters. Those 128,000 victims didn't lose their money because of cryptocurrency per se. They lost it because someone used the appearance of cryptocurrency investment to run a classic fraud. If there had been better oversight, better investor protection, better requirements for transparency, this might have been caught earlier. The damage might have been limited. The cryptocurrency industry can either regulate itself or it can wait for governments to do it. And government regulation, shaped by cases like this one, is likely to be much more restrictive than the industry would like. So here's my challenge to the crypto industry. Prove that this technology can be a force for good. Prove that it can be innovative without being a haven for criminals. Prove that decentralization doesn't have to mean zero accountability. Because right now, the biggest stories in cryptocurrency are either about price speculation or about crime. The Crypto Queen, the Mt. Gox hack, the Silk Road, Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX, Quadriga CX, OneCoin, another Crypto Queen case that deserves its own story. These aren't the stories that inspire trust. These aren't the stories that make regulators think, yes, this industry can police itself. The technology has potential. Blockchain has legitimate uses. Cryptocurrency could revolutionize finance, making it more accessible, more efficient, more democratic. But not if every other major case is a multi-billion-dollar fraud. So to the innovators, the developers, the entrepreneurs in the crypto space, the world is watching. The regulators are watching. The victims of scams like Zhimin Qian's are watching. Show us that cryptocurrency can be more than a tool for criminals.
show us that the future of finance doesn't have to be built on the ruins of people's life savings. Because if you don't, the future of cryptocurrency will be shaped by cases like this one, by massive frauds, lengthy investigations, court cases, and prison sentences. And that's not the future any of us wants. So here we are, at the end of this remarkable story. A woman who built a multi-billion-dollar criminal empire, who fled her home country and created a new identity, who lived in luxury in one of the world's greatest cities, who controlled 0.29% of all Bitcoin that will ever exist, and who now sits in a British prison, serving nearly 12 years, having lost everything. Zhimin Qian's story is, in many ways, a very old story, dressed in very new clothes. It's a story about greed, about hubris, about the belief that you can outsmart the system, that you're smarter than everyone else, that the rules don't apply to you. It's also a story about 128,000 people whose trust was betrayed, whose savings were stolen, whose futures were derailed. And it's a story about justice, imperfect, slow, but ultimately real. The crypto queen wanted to be a legend. She wanted to be powerful, wealthy, untouchable. She got her wish, in a way. She is a legend now, but not the kind she imagined. She's a cautionary tale, a reminder that no matter how sophisticated the crime, no matter how advanced the technology, there's still accountability, there's still law enforcement, there's still justice. Her legacy is this: $6.6 billion in seized Bitcoin, 11 years and 8 months behind bars, a permanent mark in the history of cryptocurrency crime, and a warning to anyone else who thinks they can get away with it. You can't. The blockchain never forgets. Law enforcement never stops. Justice may be slow, but it's patient. And somewhere, right now, there's another would-be crypto queen reading this story and thinking, I could do it better. I wouldn't make those mistakes. To that person, I say this: Zhimin Qian thought the same thing. She was smart, sophisticated, careful. She planned her escape. She created a new identity. She hid in plain sight in one of the world's most cosmopolitan cities. And she still ended up in prison. You will too. The story of the crypto queen is over, but the lessons of her rise and fall will echo for years to come. To the victims, I hope you find some measure of compensation and closure. To the investigators, thank you for your persistence and your skill. To the would-be criminals, you've been warned. And to everyone else, remember this story the next time someone promises you extraordinary returns on an investment you don't understand. Remember Zhimin Qian. Remember the crypto queen. And ask yourself, is it worth it? Because as this story clearly demonstrates, it never is. If you enjoyed this episode, kindly give us a like and subscribe for more entertaining and educating true crime stories.